Hello, everyone. I hope you're doing well today. We're about to get started, and this is Tico Huber, and I'll be facilitating the session today with Mork Bredeson, the president of Service 800. And before we get started, to make sure that you guys have a great experience, there's a couple of housekeeping things. The first of all is I need everybody to make sure that they mute their phone line. Otherwise, we'll end up with lots of beeps in and out. So as you have a chance, just please mute your lines. Secondly, you'll be able to ask questions throughout the presentation by going into your chat area and clicking on that, and then just posting your questions. And then what I'll do is at the end of the presentation, I'll be checking in with Jean and asking her just to respond to some of people's questions. Okay, and then please make sure that you are muting if you've just joined on. And I may remind you just from time to time if we hear lots of beeps just to ask people to mute. Again, I apologize if that's an inconvenience on your end, but that's technology. Gotta love it, right? So I'll wait just one more minute here so we get everybody the final joins, and then I'll introduce Jean in just a second. Thanks for your time.
So then right when you introduce them, then again, say mute, just because that's people.
Yeah, I think we'll remember. We're at 17. So I'll wait maybe 30 more seconds.
Thank you. So when I touch page down, then we're going to see what the introductions or the title page.
It'll be the title page.
Okay.
Well, are the animations in there though? So
I already got through.
Okay, good, thank you.
Okay.
So I'll send a chat message. Please be sure to mute your
Yes.
phones.
Or thank you for meeting me.
Yes.
Enthusiasm. Oh, man. What a day.
Hey everyone, this is Tico again. I'll be facilitating today's session, and I'd like to introduce Mork Bredeson. And just one more time, it'd be really great if everyone could mute their phone lines. And as I said, today's presentation will be about making better decisions through benchmarking. And Mork Bredeson, the president of Service 800, will be dealing with the subject of how to apply benchmarks to business decisions. And we're and kind of what predicated this presentation was that we're in a period where most companies are measuring and trending service quality and customer satisfaction. But the issue that's kind of come up and the challenge is that we have to be able to better understand these metrics and how to use them and apply them to our business. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Jean and have her address this on how we can make better decisions using benchmarks. Welcome, Jean.
Thanks, Tico, and good morning, everyone. Thanks for the opportunity to talk to you about benchmarking. I think I've met many of you that have signed up for this conference. For those of you who are new to Service 800 or to our organization, welcome. We're very happy to share this conversation with you. What we're going to be doing today is we're going to very quickly go through overviews about benchmarks, how they apply, how one would be able to identify a strong benchmark, why benchmarks are even worth their time, some challenges and some misconceptions, and then most importantly, how benchmarks will save you money. So first, in the area of introductions, I would like to introduce myself. I am a engineer and a life career specialist in continuous improvement. I've been with Service 800 since it began 22 years ago, and many of you know Service 800 and our business, which I would describe as being a specialist, and perhaps one would say that our forte is to build systems for action from sound service quality and customer satisfaction measurements. We're based in Minneapolis, in London, England, and in Shanghai, China. And we serve organizations around the world and work with customers all over the world in 40 languages every day to collect information about how services are being delivered and to benchmark and to be able to drive improvements by accurate measurements and by appropriate comparisons. So today the topic is benchmarking. And probably the reason that benchmarks are near and dear to our lives is because they are at the essence a human or a very personal characteristic. It's very normal and very usual for us, whether from a private level or from a professional level, to wonder where we stand and how we might compare to people around us. Some of you know that I like to tell stories, and today I'd like to share with you my favorite benchmarking story for today. And that story is this. There was an elderly couple, and they were sitting on their porch having a sweet tea, rocking and enjoying a hot summer afternoon. And all of a sudden, the elderly woman stands up and walks over to her husband and throws the tea in his face and says, "Here, that's for being a lousy kisser for 50 years. And then she goes quietly, and she goes and sits back in her rocking chair. And they rock for a little bit longer, and then the gentleman stands up, and he takes a step over towards her, and he throws his sweet tea in her face. And he says, "There, that's for knowing I'm a lousy kisser." So isn't that funny that even in our personal lives, benchmarks and comparisons find their way into how we act and how we should act. So let's talk about what a benchmark really is. The word benchmark is very common to all of us. I don't know if we all realize that the word benchmarks actually comes from Renaissance days, when cobblers would ask their customers to put their foot on their bench so they could draw a chalk mark around their shoe. And then they would build the shoe according to the bench mark. So benchmarks certainly are the process of comparing one's business process and performances and associated metrics to industry bests and to best practices from other industries, because we learn when we compare ourselves to characteristics and delivery successes from others, and it leads us to be doing things better, faster, and cheaper. There are a lot of benchmarks out there, and the first thing we have to do is talk about what kind of benchmarks we should be thinking about, what kinds of benchmarks we should be talking about. The first category of benchmarks would be considered to be philosophical benchmarks. A philosophical benchmark is a collection of information that comes from other companies or individuals or circumstances. A philosophical benchmark would be described as a benchmark where individuals are allowed to post their findings or their scores or their information into some kind of a database or a collector, where they can compare their information to other organizations. You probably know that there are many public databases and consultants and organizations who host a database benchmark environment where an individual or an organization can go and post his or her respective findings, and then with those findings they can compare themselves to a group of the other participants. Those philosophical benchmarks could also include benchmarks that are media-driven. In other words, measurements and research studies that are hosted by magazines and trade journals and so forth. Typically, a philosophical benchmark is not...
Participant lines muted.
Typically, a philosophical benchmark is not validated. Validated would be the other characteristic of a benchmark. Validated benchmark would be benchmarks that are collected in a statistically appropriate, significant, auditable, and solid methodological fashion. So a validated benchmark might be a benchmark that is performed by a number of organizations or associations, where each participant's information is actually tested and collected under constraints associated with definitions for a benchmark program. Benchmarks can be internal. One can compare business units or technicians or individuals within their organization, or benchmarks can be external. Various characteristics or components of a service delivery could be compared to similar components of outside organizations on a collected basis, and benchmarks can have industry standards. Certainly, the very first characteristic or the very first consideration when choosing a benchmark and implementing a benchmark in any kind of a comparative process is to understand whether or not a benchmark is truly statistical, whether it's truly significant, and the information is built up in a scientific manner.